I'm working on a quilt here, and I just wanted to show a quick useful tip that I learned. There's a lady on YouTube, her name's Lorena. She has a channel, and I'll put a link to it. But I learned this trick from her. Instead of binding your quilt with traditional binding, you can actually use the backing. So I've used my backing fabric as my binding. Now the way she does it, I'll just put a link to her video because you could probably see it better on her video anyway. I'm not a very good cameraman, but she uses Elmer's glue to secure the binding, washable glue stick, and what she does, let me take some more pins out here. So on her tutorial, she cuts away all the batting. The excess batting is removed. You have to be careful when you do that because you don't want to cut your backing inadvertently. But she then cuts the backing fabric down to 1 inch away from the top, all the way around the quilt. She folds it over to butt it up against the edge, uses the glue stick here, and then she folds it over again and presses it, and that secures the binding in place. And then she shows you how to miter the corners. I found that I can actually leave more than just 1 inch here. As long as it's consistent around the entire quilt, you should be able to get your mitered corners. So I cut mine down to 3 inches. That's a good size for this quilt. So I cut 3 inches all the way around, and I left some batting here. But the reason I do that is because if you're gonna have wider binding, you want to have a little bit of body to it, or at least I do. So it gives a little bit of volume to the binding when you do leave a little bit of the batting. However, you do have to cut out the corners here, the batting, because it's too much bulk and you won't get the mitered corner. So you fold over the fabric, butt it up against the edge, and fold it over again. And then I'm just pinning mine. So all the way down to the edge here. And then I cut off the audio here because I make a mistake. You see me folding this triangle here, and I'm folding it in too early. I didn't fold in the top of the edge that I was working on. So you'll see me correct that here in a minute, but basically what I'm telling you here is I left some batting, about 1 inch of batting all the way around the border of the quilt, just to add volume to the binding. But you're going to have to fold in that triangle here after you've completed folding in the binding on the top edge, which I don't do here, and then you'll see me here, I'm folding it in to butt it up to the edge, but it's not turning out. So you'll see me correct that in just a minute here. Alright, so now I go back up and fix the other edge. So I'm folding that over all the way to the end. Now you fold in your triangle to get your mitered corner. So you fold that in about 1 inch away, then you fold the rest of it over to butt up to the edge, and then you fold over one more time, and that should give you the miter, which you see is turning out now. So you might have to do a little bit of playing around with it, but you should get a mitered corner. It's just a lot of fabric to be folding in together, so you might have to play around just a little bit to get it, but it works. And another thing you can do if you want an even wider binding, instead of butting it up to the edge here on the first fold, you can just fold it in from the top a little, like maybe a ½ inch or so, bring it down, and then secure it all the way down to the edge. And so that's it's even wider, you know, and you do that down here and bring it over. My fabric's getting tired of me folding it over. Fold it down, and then you bring your triangle here down to about 1 inch away from the top here. And then I did like a ½ inch here, so I'm going to bring it in. And you should get a mitered corner. Again, this one's not perfect because I'm trying to show on camera. Of course, it's not cooperating, but you do get the mitered corner. You might just have to play a little bit with it. Like this one's not perfect, but that's another option too, is you can have an even wider binding. So I just thought this tip might be useful to someone if you're new to quilting and you don't want to put traditional binding on. This is a lot quicker and easier. You'll get it done faster this way too. You can hand stitch this on if you want, or you can just use a sewing machine and sew it on. That's what I plan on doing with this, but you see it's a lot wider now. Of course, I've got it folded in more on the quilt top too, but that's another option. So I just thought that might be useful for someone to know if you're working on a quilt and you want to use your backing as the binding. Another thing I'll show you on this quilt, I didn't have enough backing fabric to use for the entire backing of the quilt. I didn't have enough yardage. So what I did was I used some scraps and I pieced together the center of the backing. So, and by the way, this is called cheater's fabric. I got it in the Amish country. It looks pieced, but it's just a print. Let me try to show you what I did here. I've got pins everywhere, so I'm trying not to poke myself. I decided just to use a picture to show you the backing here. So what I did was I patched together some materials left over from the project and made a centerpiece, because the backing fabric I had wasn't large enough to fit the entire quilt. So I just cut it in two. So I had 2 giant pieces of backing fabric. Then I patched together the centerpiece and I added the backing material to either edge of that, just so that when it folds over it looks consistent all the way around, since I'm using that for my binding. So I thought that might be a useful tip to someone. You can actually use leftover materials or whatever you want to use for the backing. It's your quilt, so you can do whatever you want, and the options are endless, but this is just what I decided to do. Thanks for watching.